So before I go through the article, I just want to give a little bit of background information. The girl at the center of the story, Irene Grandstedt, later went on to become a minor actress, with a career spanning from the late 1920s to the 1950s, which gives this story an interesting twist. Alright, now let's get into the article. Girl slurred by boy lover borrows gun and shoots him. The Washington Times, May 14th, 1922. Through the shadows of the grove around the Mountain View Church one night recently, the throngs of young people going into the dance saw a slim figure flit behind a big palm tree. They thought it was a little boy in overalls, with a toy pistol dangling from a wide cavalryman's belt around his waist, come to play pranks on the merrymakers. And they laughed at the youngster, until Harold Galloway, a 17-year-old high school student, went out to see what the child was up to. There was a rustle of leaves as the figure, dodging, fell. Sharp words came fast and then, "Oh, I thought I was too low for you to speak to in public." It was the voice of a girl in hot anger, but before they could identify it, a spurt of flame illumined the struggling couple, and the boy crumpled up in a heap among the leaves. When the dazed crowd, streaming out of the parish house, reached them, the little overalled figure was shaking with sobs, and in the glare of flashlights, they recognized Irene Grandstedt, the 14-year-old sweetheart of the wounded lad. She was weeping. "Oh, I didn't mean to hurt you, Harold. It went off by accident. Please speak to me." She was dabbling at one of his bleeding fingertips with a handkerchief. But when the unconscious youth was carried into the parish house, it was found that the bullet, after clipping the end of his finger, drilled into his abdomen, perforating his intestines in 12 places. Death, the doctors said, was only a matter of days. Irene, at once pathetic and ludicrous in her overalls, a slip of a girl who looked 2 years younger than the 14 accredited her, fought for an opportunity to help. With violet eyes sparkling in grief and terror, and blonde bobbed hair streaking across her tear-spattered face, she appeared a distraught child, and they did not even bother to summon an officer to arrest her. When the dying lad was taken to the Red Cross hospital, and the dancers, who had been interrupted by the tragedy, sifted home in frightened groups, the girl stumbled out across the fields to her own little home, 2 miles away. She went to bed without undressing, and without speaking to her parents of what she had done. At dawn, the sound of hammering on the door startled her. She heard the voices of her parents in angry protest, and then the call of the impatient sheriff. "Oh, open up and bring out the murderess. What do you think I'm here for?" In that gentle fashion was the news broken to Irene's mother and father. Panic-stricken, the girl ran down the stairs into the open arms of her dumb-stricken mother. The sheriff pulled her away and lifted her into his car, throbbing in the roadway. 10 minutes later, before the family could grasp what it all meant, Irene was in San Jose prison, in the custody of probation officer Catherine Bratton, pending the result of Galloway's injuries and the action of the grand jury and the county prosecutor. She told Miss Bratton that she and Harold had been sweethearts, and that he became jealous when she went out with another youth. They had quarreled. He had declared in the schoolyard that she was so low that he wouldn't speak to her again in public. He had not invited her to the parish house, nor had anyone else. Humiliated and angry, she said, she had borrowed the pistol from a neighbor's boy, Curtis Morgan, and had gone to make Harold apologize. In the dispute, she had threatened him. He had dared her to shoot. And then, as he sought to wrest the weapon from her, the cartridge was exploded. Hysterical at the recollection of it, she insisted that it was all an accident. With the sheriff, the school principal, the county physician, and the probation officer, Irene was hurried to the hospital to face the dying boy. Gulping, she attempted to speak, but the words would not come. Young Galloway, conscious temporarily, started at her slowly, then smiled and said, "Hello, Irene." The boyish prisoner tried to smile back as the sheriff reminded the patient that he was dangerously injured and requested that he make an explanation of the shooting. The lad's eyes slowly swept the circle of faces, then rested on the agonized features of the girl. For a full minute, there was silence. Then he said, clearly and with evident effort, "Irene did not mean to do it. It was an accident. I ask that no charge be brought against her." Again the smile, and the eyes closed. The boy's beau jest was done. Irene Granstedt swayed against the sheriff, then recovered herself with an effort as they led her back to the automobile and the prison. By a queer twist of destiny's threads, Mrs. J.C. Galloway, mother of the wounded lad, was in a nearby room of the hospital, awaiting the birth of a child. She was not informed of the shooting. Back in the Granstedt cottage, the girl's father, Theodore, who keeps the local store, was mending a drain pipe. Asked what he intended to do to help Irene, he answered curtly, "Irene is my daughter. I don't know the circumstances of the case yet, and I won't talk about it." Inside the cottage, the fear-shaken mother of the girl said, "My husband never liked Irene, and now he blames me for this trouble. But maybe if he hadn't been so harsh with her, I would not have been so easy. He never wanted her to go to parties. She was afraid of him. Do you think she would have come home in the night and crept into bed with that terrible thing on her mind if she felt that she could have come into our room and told her trouble to her mother? But she was afraid of her father. I don't know the whole story, but I can't believe that she meant any wrong. I don't believe that she meant to shoot anyone." The mother's eyes filled, and she recalled her own girlhood on a Kansas farm, where she had grown up in terror of her parents, adding, "Once, I too went out to a church party without asking permission, because I knew I wouldn't get it. When I got home, I was met with a long black horsewhip, and oh, what a terrible beating I got." The woman shuddered and went on. "My heart closed against my mother and father that night, and they wouldn't even let me go out with my own brothers after dusk. So, remembering how I was brought up, I guess, maybe I was too easy with Irene, but her father was too harsh." Mrs. Granstedt paused, and her mind went back to the night before, as she said, "You heard Irene wrote poetry. Yes, she was always writing it, but she didn't read it to us. She used to lock it in her hope chest upstairs with all the other things she was saving. She was always kind and sweet to me. She left me that night early, saying she was going out with a friend for a while. I saw her a moment as she came in, and I thought by the look in her eyes that something terrible had happened. But she went straight to bed without talking at all, and I heard her moaning and crying, but I couldn't go in and ask her what was wrong, for she and her father do not get along friendly now, and I was afraid of her. But Teddy, the 13-year-old brother of Irene and Vivian, the baby of the family, red-eyed from weeping, begged for news of their sister, and assured visitors that she just couldn't have done anything wrong, and was she coming home soon? Would the visitor tell her that the boys and girls at the school were awful sorry for her? Mrs. Sadie Morgan, the nearest neighbor, with Curtis and the other children around her, was trying too, but she said, "My boy knew nothing about this affair. Little Irene came to us in the afternoon and asked if she could borrow a gun because she was going to a picnic next day. My husband always keeps several revolvers, and Curtis, who shoots at target practice, thought she wanted to use a pistol at a picnic match. He got her a gun and buckled the belt and holster around her waist. I wasn't paying much attention. I did not notice if she acted unusually. I certainly can't believe that child would do such a thing." And Curtis, also a high school boy, sturdily corroborated what his mother said, his freckled face paling as he thought of the shooting. An odd phase of it is that the sheriff is finding it difficult to get any witnesses to testify against Irene, for despite the throngs at the dance, all assert that they were inside the building or far from the scene when the pistol flashed in the darkness. This is particularly odd, because Irene's affair with the older boy had brought public censure on them months ago. Complaint has been made to the juvenile court, and young Galloway's parents had been considering the advisability of sending him to the city to break off the infatuation. But the elfish beauty of the girl, her poetic precocity, and her hoyden spirit had won her a warm place in the hearts of the townspeople, even though they shook their heads over her wildness. And she seems not to have lost them since that black night in the Mountain View Grove. I just want to add a little bit of information at the end of this video too. Despite the article mentioning Harold Galloway's impending death, it seems that he might not have actually died. Irene's Wikipedia page cites a newspaper article from a few days after the shooting with the headline, "Galloway Boy Gaining Fast," which sounds like he improved significantly. I also found a Find a Grave listing for a Harold Galloway who would have been 17 at the time of the shooting, and died in 1953 in the same area of California where the shooting occurred. What's throwing me off, though, is the fact that the article in this video was published on May 14th, and seems to say that the shooting happened on May 13th in San Francisco. But this seems to have been a mistake, because the Imperial Valley Press covered the story 3 weeks earlier, though the articles were very short. This article was the most thorough one I could find on the story, so that's why I chose it. So yeah, I guess this story had a happy ending after all. Well, probably.